We are recording. Whenever you're ready, Doug, go ahead and take it away.
Eric Herzog, welcome to the Insight Jam podcast.
Great. Well, thank you. Always love working with Insight and Solutions Review and all the things you guys do, not only from a vendor perspective, but the things you do for the end users. We just did that panel, as you know, on security, cybersecurity about a month ago. And got really good feedback from a bunch of end users and actually a bunch of our channel partners saw it and said, hey, that was good data. It wasn't overly geeky and it wasn't focused on the vendors. It was focused on the end users and the channel. So you guys do great stuff. We really appreciate it.
Well, the Insight Jam YouTube page is actually having a moment. We're really kind of popping, which is great. But it's all the great people that we've been able to have on, and you've been very generous with your time. But for this podcast, I want to keep it a little more informal.
Sure.
Do you remember what was your first gig in technology?
Okay, so my first gig in technology, since I've been doing it a long time, I'm almost 70, was in 1985. I worked for a very small startup that was doing external storage systems primarily for Macintosh environments and silicon graphics, very focused on the performance needs of videographers, movie studios, and they were all using either silicon graphics boxes or Macs.
And how did you get that? How did you stumble into tech? Right. I'm always fascinated. I used to be in politics before, but then when I saw the internet, I said, all right, I gotta go.
So I have a master's degree in Chinese history from the University of California. And so when I got out, three people recruited me: the CIA, the NSA, and the because at the time I was an ex-collegiate wrestler and I spoke Chinese, not very well.
Do you still speak Chinese? No.
Yo hablo español un poquito. That's it. And I also spoke a little bit of Russian. And obviously it was not to be Jason Bourne or James Bond.
I was going to say, you're like perfect.
It's like the SEALs. I mean, so that's different. But the CIA and NSA was to be a guy who would read stuff in Chinese and write reports.
Yep.
Right. And they would decode stuff. Then, that's what the deal was. So I did not take that. And my former roommate at UC Davis was an electrical engineer. He worked at Intel for a year, hated it. His summer job had been working for a swimming pool company for years and years. And the guy was selling it. And he convinced his parents to loan him money. So he was the CEO and I was the general manager. So we had probably 100 people that reported to me. And then I reported to him. And we had 2 retail stores. We were a solar contractor, swimming pool contractor, right? We did Joan Baez. Willie Mays was a customer, Jim Plunkett, right? Old people now, but at the time, Jim Plunkett was a customer. Willie Mays, Ronnie Lott and Carlton Williamson bought spas from us. But anyway, our office manager left and she had been she was a finance person and went back to work at this startup. And so the guy was looking for someone who was aggressive, and I had a lot of sales and marketing background. I'd been in the pool company for 3.5 years. We'd been growing out, had nothing to do with high tech. I did have a Mac and used a Mac. So I just learned my storage since then. And then after that, that was senior director of sales and marketing. In the storage space, I've done everything. I've done product management, product marketing, CMO multiple times. I've been the chief revenue officer multiple times. You're going to laugh. I even was a CFO at one company for 18 months, and we raised $30 million with me as the CFO, as well as the CMO, by the way, at the same time. So that's how I got into tech, was literally through a relationship of someone who had worked for me in the pool business and then went to work for a high-tech company.
Yeah, so you were, and I remember this too, because I came out of school in 84, and I ran a political campaign for my college roommate in 84 we used like at the time we had to build our own database. There was no database. We built an electoral database of voters. We had a bunch of volunteers kind of input all the information. It was a small little legislative race in Massachusetts, but by just the power of using a database and then a machine-fed daisy wheel printer cranking out personal letters after every day of canvassing, who everybody thought, were hand typed out, and back in the day when you didn't realize how it all worked. We were able to get him elected, and I was fascinated from that point forward with technology. And that was the PC, that was that early 80s, mid 80s PC boom that we all went through. And then there was I went into politics and came out with, I ended up kind of graduating all the way up the political chain to working for the governor in Massachusetts, and ended up working on this initiative to blow up unemployment offices in the mid 90s. And that was just when the internet was hitting, and we were building a job bank and a talent bank. And I thought, holy moly, this is a big deal. And that was the second big wave. But have you ever seen anything like what we're about to go through right now? I mean, it seems like this AI wave is a whole different breed of cat I compare it to the implications of the PC and the internet. But honestly, I think it's going to be even more transformational and in a very.
Well, I think every generation of these humps in the high tech have gotten more and more impact on overall society. So the mainframe, clearly. But did most people know that their bank or the government was using a mainframe, or that General Motors or Daimler-Benz? Heck no, they had no clue. Okay. Then you had the PC revolution. Then people really came in their face. The internet. And obviously, I would argue actually the iPhone, because the iPhone is a computer that happens to make
mobile computing.
The mobile computing was sort of the wave after the internet, right? You had the PC, then I'd say the internet, right? Yep. The old Netscape browser.
Yep.
Then mobile. And remember, actually, Apple had that product. I forgot what it was called. It was before the iPod. Oh, the Newton.
The Newton, yep, sure.
And the problem with the Newton was, the recognition, but the iPhone and the Droid phone are basically souped up Newtons. Oh, and remember, the Newton couldn't make a phone call. That was
that was the one. That was one drawback.
There were cell phones already. So if they had made, put the chip on there, just like Motorola and all the cell phone guys were doing in those days, they might have kept that thing alive, despite the fact that the recognition was horrible. But basically the iPhone in particular is basically a Newton on steroids, to say the least. And so that's revolution. And I say AI is the next one. I think the issue with AI is there's some more danger around it than there is with what you saw with any of the others. And I say that in the disruption to employment possibility, which I think really is a little bit overblown. I do think there is issues of regulation. Okay, because you could take AI and you could make a picture of you and me that looks totally different, or put us in different clothes and make us look like you and I are running to kill somebody when we're not. We're sitting here doing this right now. And that can all be done with AI. And then you or I are in jail and we didn't have anything to do with it. And they'll say, but here's the video evidence, pretend it's Perry Mason in the future. So Perry Mason is there trying to defend me. And the guy, the DA is saying, Mr. Herzog, Doug, we've got you guys on tape. Look, 47 cameras saw you do this. Yeah. And you and I were there. So AI creates a danger there. I do think there's disruption in the short term. Forget that part of it. On the legal side, right? I recently attended a conference by IDC, which was on a lot of topics, but all the topics had an AI tinge. And several of the sessions were led by IP attorneys. And they were talking about, if you're using open source, you can expose your own stuff. You can steal stuff without knowing it. As you probably know, several of the high-tech companies here in Silicon Valley, like Apple, do not allow use of ChatGPT or others because they're scared as heck. Either A, their IP is going to leak out and they're funding their competition for free, or B, somehow they're going to inadvertently use someone else's IP and be sued. So I do think in the short term, the legal ramifications are huge, like tremendous. I do think there's a second wave of legal, like the example of you and I, a video where you and I did not do the crime, but they claim we do. And next thing we're in the Hooskow. So I do think that, and I never really worried about that with the internet. You wouldn't worry about with mobile computing. right? There are other things, people preying on kids and stuff because they don't know that if they're adults or not. Okay, and that's really bad stuff. But the AI stuff could be on steroids bad compared to any of that stuff, whether it's, and by the way, if we don't think all the malware and ransomware guys are using AI to attack everybody, they are.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
if we,
and the implications for the business networks are significant. And actually,
yeah.
I just had a conversation yesterday just around that very thing about how sophisticated the attacks are becoming with regard to ransomware, and honestly, I think it's really changing. There's a lot of thought now going into basically immutable storage where it just
Right.
there's just no, you can't even change it. You can't change your own data.
Well, and we do that right now. So we have a technology called Infinidat. We've been shipping it for over 2 years now. We don't charge for it. It's part of our overall operating system, the Infuse OS. It will work in a hybrid cloud environment. We've added some new technology recently in Q2 that allows us to integrate with cybersecurity software that has nothing to do with the storage and have them work together as a team to help. So yeah, I would argue that but again, that impact of AI is on the security side first, and then we'll flow through everything. And I think AI will be completely transformational. Hopefully it'll all be in the positive vein, but so far there are some inklings that some of it could be actually disruptive in a non-positive way, which the internet wasn't that.
Yeah,
right?
no, I don't see how. And truth of the matter is we here at Solutions Review and with the Insight Jam in particular, we're very keen to kind of keep cracking this thing open a little bit, because this feels different. And I do have the perspective similar to you. I go all the way back, and I've never seen anything like this. Technology has always been about enabling the human being, right? Either through the PC or networks or mobility or cloud computing, whatever it is. But this feels different. This feels very much like replicating and improving upon and quite frankly outperforming the human information worker in a way that I don't see how businesses don't default to, we can save a lot of money, we're just doing it. We're just going to start cycling people out where we can.
Well, I think it can be used very, very effectively. A friend of mine she and I worked together in our days at IBM, she's CMO now of a $2 billion company, and they use AI extensively, but guess what? They let go of nobody.
Yep.
Because they still have the human oversight. They're still worried about, trademarks and IP and other stuff. Quite honestly, even though they've done extensive training with the training modules, when you're an expert in storage, or you're an expert in networking, or you're an expert on databases, the AI can't mimic that, at least certainly not in the next 4 to 5 years. So you still need that human oversight. Now, that doesn't mean that if you needed 3 people in product marketing, now you can get by with 2, right? And that for sure is definitely going to happen in this.
I mean, that's the thing to me. The idea that the idea that it isn't going to replace people is, I remember Sears, who didn't think this internet e-commerce thing was going to catch on at all. I remember buying my music at a store, and in individual chunks of 10 in a cassette or an album or whatever. I remember going to Blockbuster Video. I mean, these things are no longer the idea that the AI technology crowd won't be able to contain themselves and build better and better and better. I just can't see that. Having seen enough of this now, I just can't see that stopping. And maybe it will come down to kind of an outside intervention of a government source or some other regulation, because in the end the implications could be truly catastrophic for certain sectors of employee. I mean, and people that are reasonably well paid. I'm thinking like junior developers, like the people that are moving up the path in terms of software architecture. I don't think you're going to need junior developers.
No, you just need the senior people, and they'll manage the AI.
And so if there's no path,
right? Exactly.
How do you get to the top of the pyramid if there's no path for you anymore? There aren't junior developers, which is what everybody starts out as. That's
one of the key things that was pointed out at the IDC summit is government regulation is already starting to happen. B is that many large enterprises are forming AI committees to make sure they don't get sued. They make sure it is getting used appropriately. And they were talking about all these various groups that are being put together, industry groups, to try to monitor. And they gave some examples. For example, as you know, IBM was helping with a lot of that facial recognition, and so was Microsoft. The perception was in certain countries, mostly in the dictatorial type, it was being used in the wrong way. And even in democracies, there was a bias in certain countries towards, whites only, and perceiving that people of color were all bad. And that was done with the AI, and even the AI that was well trained. So they themselves, in the case of IBM and Microsoft, self-regulated that they weren't allowing that AI technology to be used for those sorts of things, right? And surveillance things. So if the surveillance is really crime-oriented, that's one thing. But in certain countries, dictatorial, that surveillance thing is turned from what would be purse snatching or car theft, it gets turned into political oppression. And facial recognition was helping that. So they self-regulated. So companies do the self-regulation on the vendor side. In this case, both IBM and Microsoft deserve very strong kudos for that. Then on the enterprise side, big corporations form their own committees to make sure that they don't end up with a lawsuit on their side because they designed the new car and they used AI to design the new car, and Daimler stole everything from Toyota, and Toyota stole everything from Ford. And that kind of stuff, that self-regulation there. And then the government's clearly going to regulate certain elements of this because it can have an adverse implication. And obviously in certain countries where it is unregulated, it is really being used. And that's why IBM and Microsoft got out as a form of political oppression. I hate to say 1984, but it's kind of like 1984. The book.
I think, and again, I'm not even in the nefarious. I kind of the way we're thinking about it here anyway is more just in there's the old saying of whatever a year now that says you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by somebody who's using AI, and the way we're thinking about it is how do you create strategies for people to begin to recognize that there's a legit if you and I, we're older, right? But if you're I have kids, and if you're in your 20s through your 40s, you've got 20 years minimum of what's coming, and what's coming is going to be. I think it's just going to be absolutely transformational with regard to how employees are valued, where they can be sustained in terms of performance. In marketing, it's like if you can get a machine to run a split test 1,000 times and ultimately, as opposed to a marketing person who can only do so much from a human perspective, while they have a creative interpretation to a certain degree, there's only one right answer. Is after you kind of get through all the permutations, there's going to be one winner, and of whatever the performance that you're looking for is. And the art of it is almost gone. It becomes down to the science of what ad's going to win. And if you can just overpower that with just cycles and cycles and measure and refine, I don't see how a human competes against that.
Well, we're a small company. We're hundreds of millions. We clearly punch above our weight. We've won, 18 awards so far this year. We won 32 awards, and most of those are from the analyst community, not paid press. So that's got a lot of impact. We've won for 6 years now the Gartner Peer Insights Customer's Choice, and that's literally based on customer reviews, which Gartner just makes sure it's not you or I reviewing ourselves, but it's a real customer. And other than that, So that's all good. But because we're so small, and even though we punch above our weight, we have a meeting in June, and that's going to be about how do you think we could use AI? Because I can't hire, at an EMC, I had 150 people, right? At IBM, I had like 70 something. Here, I've got 15 people counting me, and I'm doing everything, right? And those other companies, I might not have every marketing function, right? I didn't have the graphic design people. I didn't have channels. So here, I need to leverage that. But the idea would be like my friend has done, right? Kim Storin, is to use the AI, not to lay people off, but instead of hiring 20 more people, which by the way, could be a negative if you're in the job market, right? Instead of hiring 20 more people, I need to hire 2 more, and I can do the job of what an EMC or an IBM or an HP can do.
I don't think there's any question. I'm sure there's going to be a salesperson knocking on your door after they see this with that solution for you. I mean, there's no question that, as well as anybody that the market is going to be juicy for technology enabled, optimized performance based technologies that can, power a small team and to punch above their weight. I don't think there's any question about it.
And we've done that without AI, but now we need to punch even harder above the weight because now the big guys were on their radar. When we were smaller, we were an irritant, but now it's like, whoa, wait, 28% of the Fortune 50 use Infinidat, 28%. So for a company our size, that's a lot. Why need AI? But now all the big guys are after me. So if I want to get to 35, if I don't use the AI to fight them off, if you will, that's going to be hard for me because I can't go hire 20 people, but I can get some AI software, hire 1 or 2 people, get everybody trained up, make sure we monitor it because we're in a very technical space as well. I do think in some of the business to consumer space where not as technical, I think AI could have a much faster impact on them putting their stuff together than what we can do because our customers are just too technical and we're very high end, right? We're not making some business to consumer high tech. We're making business to business high tech focused on the Fortune 2000. So we need that oversight of, our people, but I can still do way more work if I get some of this AI stuff and figure out a way to leverage it in the right way to act like instead of having 15 people counting me, I have 45 people counting me. And that software could help do that probably.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question about that. And it's interesting you point out the market you're in and the market we cover. One of the challenges that we've always had at Solutions Review is that we have an incredible, our audience, we would argue, is smarter than we are. and so whenever they come to read something at Solutions Review, it has to be very well crafted, and we have some very sharp people writing. But if it isn't, it's one and done, and nobody's coming back. If people lose their the feeling of credibility, and they can do that very quickly when you're dealing with such a smart audience. And I know you're dealing with an incredibly sharp market. What are people looking for these days how is Infinidat punching above their weight? What are the points that you guys are hitting particularly hard that are getting folks to jump on board?
Well, we just did this giant launch. We announced a whole new platform from the ground up from a hardware perspective with all of our software. And the real magic of Infinidat is not hardware. We don't do custom chips. We don't do custom anything. We use off-the-shelf parts, and really it's about our software. So what we're doing with our infrastructure consumption services software, Infiniverse, clearly cyber and integration of cyber technology. Our InfiniSafe has won 18 awards from press and analysts in 2 years since we launched it. And it's all about cyber storage resilience and cyber storage recovery. So we, for example, now have a piece of software that if you're using something like IBM QRadar or Splunk, this what I'll call the cybersecurity software guys, we can actually integrate with them. And when they see a threat or intrusion, we can automatically click off an immutable snapshot because we can integrate with them. And there we're really punching above our weight because we're not being the storage guy. We're being the storage guy working jointly with the security guy in an automated fashion. So that changes the ball game, right? Specifically, we've made sure we do multi-cloud hybrid integration. So our software actually can sit in Amazon or in Microsoft Azure And to the end user, it's as if it's the same. It's as if there's a physical array on-prem. It happens to be in the cloud, and they have no idea there's any difference because it's our full set of software. So the things we're trying to do are all about automation and simplifying the job. We guarantee everything. We guarantee performance. Obviously, in our space, you have to have 100% availability. They never want to be down. They're all, 365, 724. If they can't get that, and their systems need to be up all the time. So we have a very unique position that we're able to deliver that. We've got the right customer base. We're very strong and have been cited by multiple analyst firms for what I'll call our white glove support and service. For example, you got a problem with your iPhone. Number one, you go to the Apple website, and it's good. But if you want to reach a tech, you're going to reach a guy right out of college. That fix it, you go to the Genius Bar, which is what I would call a level 2 kind of technician. Okay. We don't do level 1 and level 2 tech support. We only do level 3, right? Because our customers are the biggest enterprise in the world. So they don't want to have to take a call. A guy goes through his script thing, looks at some stuff, doesn't know what he's doing, gets you to the next. We just go right to the level 3, the most technically sophisticated technical support teams. And we provide things like a technical advisor. So we differentiate not only with the technology, like our InfiniSafe cyber technology embedded in our storage, but we also differentiate with white glove support and service, which, as you know, overall in the world is going away.
Yeah.
Right? You can't pick up the phone. If you got a problem with your insurance, they want you to go right to the website first, and maybe you can get the agent.
It's going to be a chatbot.
Yeah. No,
it's going to be a chatbot. It's going to be some thing, AI-powered thing.
I still don't pay anything electronically. Now, part of that is because we're cyber storage, right? United Healthcare, 1.8 billion, right? What MGM Resort, I mean, these are now public filings because they're mandated in the US. The impact on enterprises of cybercrime is 9.5 trillion. So I still write a check and mail it. And yes, my check can get stolen, but I can cancel.
I love it.
And it's hard to work backward to steal all my money out of my account. Whereas if they got it cyberly, they don't. I saw an article recently that the FBI said Venmo's a great package, and I guess Venmo's competitors, but people can hack into there and steal your stuff way easier than other places.
I had this conversation with somebody the other day where it was, we're basically both kind of convinced that the way AI, and then you layer in quantum computing and just that there will not be an algorithm that can withstand what's coming in terms of being able to decrypt. And in the end, I mean, their position was that the data will become a liability, that you don't want to have the data necessarily because you won't be able to protect it.
Well, in fact, IBM has gone out of its way on the storage side because, as you know, you and I did some things when I was at IBM to try to come up with things that can resist quantum encryption issues, right? And so when quantum becomes more ubiquitous, and it's getting there, the next thing you know, you're going to have some cyber mafia guys, and they're going to somehow get access to it, and they will hack everybody. Well, right?
I mean, aren't all the CIA tools out there anyway? Didn't that whole breach happen? And basically every bad piece of like cyber hacking technology ended up in the dark web.
But it'll all get worse with quantum, or it could all get better. So if the cybersecurity software people, what we do in cyber storage, integrated, connect to a quantum, then that's okay. But so the AI piece is the good and the bad.
Yeah.
The bad guys are going to use it. The good guys have to use it. And who's going to win? The good guys are bad. And by the way, I bet it's going to ebb and flow.
Oh, yeah.
Because now, you could argue that the cyber crime wave is going up despite all the cybersecurity software. What we're doing with cyber secure storage,
that's
with cyber secure networks. I'd say right now the bad guys are a little bit ahead of the good guys. But doesn't mean it can't switch.
But the market is so rich for a good solution, and so you're naturally going to lean into that and come up with something, and in order to capture that very lucrative market. So I'm optimistic about that. But while I have you, I want I want to ask you, because you've done it several times, and you just said, you started a couple of years ago at Infinidat, you did it again. When you arrive at a place, say we were to hire Eric Herzog and say, come on in and get that magic going. How do you think about it when you first arrive at a solution? What do you do? What are kind of the Eric Herzog dance steps that you take as you start to say, okay, what do we have on our hands here, and what are we going to emphasize?
So first, you got to assess the solution. What are the problems, I think, with marketing? And actually, I did a video recently with the CMO Alliance and another one that's just came out actually on the 22nd of May with the Futurum Group. And it's all about marketing, art, and science, both of them with similar topics. So first of all, marketing often is a fragmented function, particularly in the global enterprise type side, whether it's B2B or B2C, doesn't matter. So you got to work together as a team. That's item number one. Secondly, the marketing team needs a part of the other teams. I view marketing as not track. It's not swimming. And yes, there are team points in track and swimming, but it's American football. I really believe it's American football. So you've got the quarterback coach, you've got the running back coach, you have the offensive line coach, you've got the tight ends coach, you got the wide receiver coach, you got the special teams coach, you got all the coaches on defense and all those teams. And if they don't work together, you don't win. I mean, and there's a couple classic examples. I mean, I'm old enough because I'm a little older than you. When Dan Fouts was the hot quarterback, right, out of the Bay Area, University of Oregon, then the San Diego Chargers, never won a Super Bowl. Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Eric Coryell.
Dan Marino. Dan Marino, same thing. So, and there are other quarterbacks who I would argue Peyton Manning is awesome. His brother is okay, and he's won 2 Super Bowls, but he can really not hold a candle to Dan Marino or Dan Fouts.
Right.
Sorry, he can't. At the same time, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame because he won a couple Super Bowls. He lost a couple, but he made 4 of them. Dan Fouts and never made one. Marino made one. The 49ers crushed him. I was at the game at Stanford Stadium, so I saw that game. So it really needs to be a team effort. So there's the A, getting marketing function as a team. B, getting marketing to be function as part of a broader team. If you're not joined to the hip with product management, now in most companies, not at Infinidat, but at IBM, EMC, I ran the marketing side and product management. So I forced making sure everybody worked together. But, I would argue business is the ultimate team sport. And when it's a team sport, it's not basketball, right? There's some basketball teams that have won with 1 or 2 great people. Now, they don't have a dynasty, but you got to work together, right? You got to work together within marketing. You got to work together with the other teams. And then it's all about taking technology, because that's what I do, and turning it into technical and business value for the end users. Everybody hates storage. I'm sorry. I love it, but they hate it. I've probably met 500 to 1,000 CIOs. Never met one who used to be a storage admin. They know they need it, but they really don't like it. So, okay, great. If I can say, well, how long does that SAP workload take you? In hours. How long? 5 hours. What if I could tell you that SAP workload on an InfiniBox all flash rate could run in 20 minutes? Now the CIO is interested, or the VP of software. So you have to play to your audience. You have to be working as a team. And I believe it's taking technology, and you need to, talk to your audience. I've got 3 kids and my son is 34. And I talk to him a certain way. When he's 54, probably a different way. And I certainly talk to him differently at 34 than when he was 24, 14, and 4, because it's all about frame of reference and understanding and be able to convey the right things. And so in high tech in particular, it's, what do you say to the storage nerd? What's the message? And it's not necessarily the same message for the CIO.
Is that what you do though? Are you looking for personas? Are you developing stories for personas within the sales circle of whatever buying circle that you're aiming at?
So let's take a real world example, us. So we have a new VP of sales operations who I used to work with, and me. And so we came up, okay, we need to do some stuff, and let's do account-based selling and account-based marketing. Sales and marketing got to work together like, 2 gloves going together. And we did that. And then we took some older personas and I call them buyers. Persona is the new word. Buyer is the old geezer word for people.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Old buyer. So, and when I looked at it, there were a bunch of buyers missing. That impact. There was also a bunch of influence. So he and I created a dual path that included all kinds of influencers as well. So let's take, for example, I can't think of an enterprise company, whether I'm here, when I was at IBM, EMC, my other startups, where if you're doing something that impacts the database team and the VP of database or the director of database, depending on the size company, doesn't have a say before you put it on this server or that storage because they own the database. So in this case, I would argue that's a decision influencer, not a decision maker. So
yeah, there's a buying circle. We always refer to it as a buying circle, right? It's not.
And so we made sure
there's no decision maker per se.
Right. The makers and the influencers. And we made it broader, right? We have a very strong focus and have won, like I said, an ungodly amount of awards for cyber storage resiliency and cyber storage recovery. And we spent a lot of development time to make sure we have the right things, not just an immutable snapshot, because every storage company's got that, but it's way beyond that. That said, that means the CISO, the security teams. The CISO isn't usually one guy. If it's more of a mid-sized company, let's say 5 or 6 billion, because that for us is a mid-sized company, maybe the CIO is actually, there is no CISO, but there is a director of security. Well, he's got to be there. Other eras, VMware or other hypervisors, VMware, Hyper-V, all those, and now the era of containers. Those people are going to have an influence. So we made sure we created a nice, as you call it, a buying circle, including makers and influencers, so that we could reach them. And then you have to speak a different language to each of them.
And is that you're very much, you're not looking for that kind of whatever, the unique selling proposition, that singular thing. You're looking for that amongst, for every persona. You're looking for things like
we've got. So for example, if I'm talking about a CISO, does the CISO really care that we have the lowest application latency in the world? No. The database guy cares.
Right.
The vice president of software cares. The CISO doesn't. So do I want to talk about it? In fact, I just did an analyst meeting with one of the large analyst firms, and there was 14 analysts on there, including several who are very security centric. So as we got to the security section of this launch that we did on, just did May 22nd, they perked up. But when I was going through the traditional storagey stuff that's part of our launch, they were glazed over. So you have to speak the right thing. If you're in China and people don't speak English, you got to speak Chinese. When you're in Mexico, you speak Spanish. When you're in the U.S., you may speak a multitude of languages. In other countries, they only speak one language. If you're in Switzerland, depends where you are, right?
What order are you looking at that? Are you trying to see what you have on your hands in terms of, what's in the Infinidat closet of goodies and benefits? Or are you saying, no, here's the story we need for the CISO, and now let's figure out whether or not we can put that story together with what we've got.
So the basis in biz-to-biz high-tech in particular is, where's the meat? To quote that old Wendy's ad, where's the frickin' meat? So I think in business consumer, you can make stuff up, exaggerate, and people may still buy stuff. Okay? That's not true in biz-to-biz high-tech. By the way, there may be other areas of biz-to-biz where you can get away with it. In high-tech, you can't.
No.
The buyers are too smart. The high-tech has an impact.
The stakes are too high.
Right. The overall business. If you're in talking to the CIO at Deutsche Bank, their business is banking. Okay? But if he doesn't do the right IT stuff, the bank falls apart. If you're at Toyota or Daimler or GM, they make cars. Okay, well, guess what? If they're doing it robotically, those are computers running those robots. In the design phase, they use all kinds of computers to do that, right? So if you are selling the storage, the compute, the networking, and it falls apart, you just renew the development cycle or the manufacturing cycle, and you will get in trouble for that. So I think that in the biz-to-biz side, what's the story today? What's the real technology that we have? Is the story reflecting the real technology? Are there other elements that we're not telling the story of that are important? Remember, people change, and I may be almost 70 years old, but I don't always start. So sometimes you get in this conservative mode. I don't believe in conservatism. You could always learn new things. The other thing that's a huge problem in marketing is too much ivory tower. If you're not in the field, so when I was at EMC as an example, anyone who was a manager, senior manager above, and I was a senior VP, so I had VPs and directors and all that, they had to be talking to customers or partners 5 days a quarter, and we actually tracked it, not counting trade shows. So if they went to a trade show,
right? That's
Cisco
cheap.
Live, VMworld, they still need to be 5 days a quarter on the road, not in the office, not ivory tower. And some people in marketing, both biz to biz as well as B2C, it's all about getting a Gartner report, an IDC report, a survey, and that's all very valuable. I'm super metrics oriented. Okay. Same time, I also know how to go with my gut. And I can go with my gut because I've done this since 1985. 5 of the startups have been acquired. EMC, I carried a P&L of 10.5 billion. We never missed our number, right? IBM, we grew almost every quarter I was there. And it's not just me because it's a team sport. But the point is I'm on the winning team and I've got a really good gut of what people want. But you get that because I talk to partners and I talk to the customers all the time. Ivory tower marketing is one of the worst things that people can do. You take the metrics and the ivory towerness and combine it with actually shaking someone's hand and being in a meeting, hopefully face-to-face, but even if it's a Zoom or a WebEx, and understanding what are their real needs and concerns. And then you craft the message around that. So what's the message today? What's the meat today? Wow, our meat really is a hybrid. It's beef, chicken, pork, and now I'd call it, the vegetarian meat. It's actually got all those elements. Well, if all you're doing is talk about your steak, that doesn't help you on the chicken side. And it doesn't help you now with what I'll call the vegetarian meat. And so you really have to understand what does your thing do and what does it not do. And that's where I say the beef comes in. Yeah, the meat. Where is the meat? What's the sizzle? And then make sure you have that. And then, by the way, when you have something new, do you need to change the story? Maybe the story changes when you've got some new technology that changes the ballgame, right? And
so let's share some sage advice for maybe some startups that might be watching or folks that are that are going up against the biggest of the big, right? Because that's the beauty of enterprise technology is that there's actually I will ask, can you out hustle the big players? Is there always room for another startup in enterprise technology, or is it just are the stakes just too high and the resistance is just going to be too much? I mean, how do you crack through?
So in all my companies, whether they be IBM twice, EMC, Seagate, which bought Maxtor, and I was at Maxtor twice. Those are all Fortune 500 companies. But I've also now done 8 small companies. Infinidat's the small company. All the other ones were startups. And 5 of those startups got acquired. The reason they got acquired is because we were beating the living out of the big boys.
And and is it just pure raw hustle and
it's
sales
a combination.
dev?
Yeah, it's A, having something that they don't have or something that's way better than they have. Is it the better mousetrap? Well, guess what? If it's way better mousetrap, even though mousetraps are old technology, you just made one that's way, 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 way better. There's also new technology. Let's say there is no mousetrap and you invent the first one and it works well, you got something new and unique. It also is about hustle. And you and I have done these several times and you remember, blah, 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 blah. I said, no problem. I'm up at 2:00. I get up at 2:00, 3:00 every morning. Even if I've been out drinking beers with my fraternity brother, I still get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It's just the way I work. And so this is all about putting together a program. You got to hustle. In fact, sometimes big companies fail. I would argue, I'd say IBM's sort of getting their juice back. But when IBM was failing, it's because they were not hustling. IBM has got more PhDs than almost any other company on this planet in all kinds of areas, including areas they never even productize. I mean, my office was in one of the, really where all the academics were. And there was stuff there about, we're doing all this truly Harvard, Cambridge, Stanford University research on batteries. And I don't mean batteries to go into your computer, just batteries. I'm like, should IBM be spending money on batteries? Well, guess what? They choose to do that. But at the same time, if you decide you're going to have that stuff, you still just can't get the proverbial saying, they've gotten fat, dumb, and happy. High tech is all about constant innovation. We talked about it earlier. The mainframe, the PC, the mobile impact, the internet impact, now the AI impact. And by the way, let's hope I live to be 200 years old. So 100 years from now, when I'm almost 170, there'll be something beyond AI. And people go, oh my God, AI, but boy, this is even more transformational. Remember, the Transcontinental Railroad, which was a technology-oriented thing, right? Someone invented the locomotive, was a transformational impact. And then, this is why you have to adapt. There's a Harvard Business School thing about how the trucking industry hurt the railroad industry. And you know what? If the railroad industry thought, wait a second, I'm about moving people and things from place to place, I'm going to buy a bunch of trucks. Then when FedEx came out, I'm going to get a bunch of planes. But too many people, so if I'm the storage guy, I'm the storage. I'm cyber storage. I'm high-end storage. I'm file. I'm block. I'm object. Whatever people need to do in storage, I can freaking do it. Now, if storage changes to Hinklemeyer, I got to do Hinklemeyer. If it changes to Bleep Store, I better do Bleep Store. But so many people get caught up in what they're doing. So, including big companies that have gobs of people. So you can still outdo the big companies. Smart big company is constantly changing itself. Constant change. And I don't mean just firing people. I mean, constantly adapt. It's all about adapting, right? People started as, where they define those 4 million year old bones in the desert of China and the desert in Africa. People all over the world of all kinds of different hair colors, body types, short, fat, different skin color, different eye color. And that's because people were able to adapt to live in frickin' Stockholm, to live in frickin' New York, to live in, Johannesburg. And it all came from those early humans adapting to various environments, arid environments, hot environments, cold environments. So the good company needs to be the way the humans have adapted over millions of years. And obviously in high tech, you got to adapt real quickly. So if the ball game changes, change the ball game.
Well,
right?
and it's interesting because there's always somebody in a very large organization who is looking to test or to try something new to see whether or not that solution might actually have an impact on some of the traditional things that they're doing. And honestly, sometimes they're looking for a little bit of a secret sauce that they can bring to the meetings that they're in and say, look what I'm doing, differentiating themselves. So yeah, I always say to startups, there's always somebody somewhere. It's not one person. There's not just one person buying your thing. They're all over the place. You just have to wiggle your way in there.
And by the way, some of the big companies, the way they modernize, they just buy startup after startup after startup after startup. That's how they do it.
Right.
So they get the startup to be their think tank, their startup to be the innovator. Now, the key thing is some of the companies that do a lot of that end up screwing up the company they buy. And companies that are really good at it make the company they bought flourish. I would argue when I was at EMC, they were really good at making flourish. We bought Isilon. When I left, it was like $3 billion. We bought them, they were at $200 million. Data Domain, the same thing. About Data Domain, they were about $300 million. When I left, also about $3 billion. And that's because EMC had a nurturing thing. Some of the other companies that have bought people have essentially killed them without realizing they're killing them. And so that is a possible way of innovation. I do think it's by the acquisition is how they're always going to innovate and they're never going to. And then others like IBM has these giant think tanks that might as well be Stanford or Harvard or Cambridge. And they're going to freaking invent stuff. And then the real issue is, are they smart enough to leverage what they just invented? And IBM's been pretty good at that. They're over 100 years old. They're the oldest high-tech company out there. And then there's other guys that have done successful just buying the startups and not screwing them up. And then there's other that bought startups and screwed them. So if you do it the right way, you can either innovate from the outside, but then nurture them. EMC did that. Or you do what IBM has done, which is, continually innovate. Mainframe, the PC, right? They've been strong in cloud. They're clearly one of the leaders in AI. So they're kind of riding each of these humps and trying to take advantage of it. Now, by the way, did they miss some? Yeah. On the internet. When the internet first came out, IBM, you could use their servers and their storage, but the internet wave of the internet software company, they probably blew that one. But the mainframe, yes. The PC, yes. Cloud, yes. Not number one, but they're in the top 5 cloud companies in the world. AI, they're clearly one of the leaders. Quantum computing, I would argue they probably are the leader.
Yep.
Right? So they're doing a good job of that. Other companies, they'll buy a quantum company. Michael Dell, not a good innovator. Michael Dell will find a quantum company that's doing okay or not doing well, and figure out how to make their bill of materials better, this and that, get the global reach, and he'll be in quantum computing. And you'd go, IBM, of course they should. Michael Dell, I don't get it. He buys somebody. So that's how he would get in, and he's been successful doing it his way too.
Yep. No doubt about it. Well, this has been great, Eric. Thanks for all the time you give us. You're always welcome on any panel we put together. You're a wealth of knowledge and experience, and obviously very well spoken. Thanks very much for the time today. Very much appreciated, and look forward to talking again soon.
Great. Well, thank you very much. You guys do a great job, and I love that you do all this technology. And this one has been more about kind of like what's high tech about, and this is probably. We probably should go to all the universities and say, if someone's thinking about being a business major, you should watch this. Because that's part of what we're doing.
We'll have another conversation like this. That's what these. See, I'm the dirty secret around here is that I'm actually not an expert at anything, and so I have to have conversations like this.
Great. Well, thank you very much. As always, anytime you need anything, please reach out to us at Infinidat. Reach out to me. Always find everything you do, and obviously the main thing is it helps the end users. Yeah, that's the most important thing.
No, great. Best of luck for the rest of the year.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.